The Lost Signals present
Children of the Night,
a celebration of universal horror.
One more picture, then we will dig it out.
And another Halloween sequel.
They'll survive its memory.
With in-depth analysis,
I know what it feels like to be God.
adult content,
The drugs I took seemed to light up my brain.
adult language,
You have to open graves, find girls to fall in love with.
and spoilers.
Bela became a wolf, and you killed him.
Join us.
Even a man who is pure of heart and says his prayers by night shall become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright.
If you
Too
say
true.
so.
Too true.
I just wanted to let everybody know that because nobody in the film has decided to tell us. And my name is Chris Morgan. Welcome to MOTS-O-Ween, where we're doing Universal Horror 1941, The Wolfman. I'm here with Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Wolfman John, here to review some movies.
Mr. Stephen Hermosi,
I'm just trying not to transform right now.
and Scott Thurlow.
Shout at the devil. How's it going?
Good. Steve-O, do you have a funny log line for us?
I do. The logline of this movie is Creepy American gets exactly what he deserves.
Yeah, I believe that was the elevator pitch for this.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get to that later, but
You sure
I'd like
will.
to kick things off with Wolfman Jonathan here with the plot.
So, we're reviewing a 77-year-old horror film about a young man coming back from 13 years in America.
I think it was 18. It's a lot. Doesn't
very
matter.
long time in America. To go to his family's estate in England, where because his older brother died, now he has to come back and become the heir apparent. There he falls in love with a young woman, and she falls in love with him because he's a peeping Tom. They meet some gypsies, some werewolves, and chaos ensues.
Lawyers, guns, and werewolves.
The shit has hit the fan.
Yeah, exactly.
So I actually really like this film, and I'm going to make a comparison to Dracula, which we also recently saw, in that while that had to cater to Bram Stoker's novel, and with mixed results, this catered really to the mythology and followed with, and as you point out, yeah, they really go heavy with it.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that. It's a very simple story about a man who gets bitten by a werewolf, comes to realize that what's happening, at the right moment decides to tell people that, hey, I'm a werewolf. Nobody actually believes him.
Werewolf.
Yeah, they think he's actually going crazy. And yeah, it ends up, it's really a tragedy about a guy who succumbed to fate that he couldn't control.
Sure.
Like a lot of good horror films do.
I mean, yeah, that's true. And it's not that I didn't like this film at all. Let me just say that off the bat, I guess. But as you said, it's a simple plot. So it works well enough because they lay out the basic sort of mythology of being a werewolf and how it works and the rules that at least this movie sets up and plays by, sure. But there's not much to it, I guess. So it's not that I didn't enjoy it. It's just that it was very simple, like a surface kind of a folklore tale, essentially. Sure, in a horror, trapping. So, I'm either looking at a very solid 1 or a soft 2, but I'm definitely not going to give it a 3 just because of that fact. It's a simple, bare bones plot, and yeah, it works well enough, like I said, and they don't introduce too much. In fact, perhaps they should have introduced 1 or 2 more things. But just overall, I thought it was fine enough. So, what do you guys think?
If you mind,
Yeah.
I agree with you on a lot of those points. It feels like an elongated Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
But again, maybe to its detriment of a 3. But I think that overall, it works for what I think they were trying to do with it.
I mean, I could largely agree with that too. So, yeah, you guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine story. There are parts of it that felt not pointless, like they could have been tightened up or done better. I think the whole romance,
I agree with that too.
Part of it was a little bit weird. Well, creepy, very strange, and there were just parts of that seemed like they didn't necessarily need to exist. And But I mean, overall, the straight up werewolf story was good. I'm leaning towards a 1 for this because for whatever reason, the ending to me felt really rushed or like really fast. I mean, maybe not rushed, but like it was like, within 10 minutes, he was like, "Hey guys, I'm a werewolf." They're like, "I don't believe you. Let's all go out for a hunt." Now the werewolf's dead. Game over.
To be fair, though, they do. I'm just going to defend that point there.
Mm-hmm.
The finale of this has all of the characters in the moors or a smoky forest, rather,
surrounding the castle.
And so all of the main players arrive at this. You have the father who is given the weapon to kill the werewolf by his son, the werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
You have
there's
stakes by having Gwen, his love interest, come out there to find him, unbeknownst to her that he is the werewolf.
Right.
And you have a group of fairly competent, like,
a hunting
police,
party led by a fairly decent detective. Sure.
So it is kind of rushed, it feels, but it also at the same time is structured well, where they bring everyone together for a final scene.
Yeah.
And that's what I give it the 2 for.
I get it. It's basically like they find the monster, or like the mystery is concluded, and the end. Like literally, a credits the end.
Yeah. Mm.
So, what do you think, Chris?
Well, a couple things. Ian, to what you said, that they did have to build a mythology. I liked, and there's a reason I started with the thing they keep repeating for the first, like every character you meet in the first like 20 minutes of the movie says, "Even a man is pure of heart." But the film opens up with somebody pulling a book off the shelf and looking at lycanthropy, which I thought was kind of cool to start the movie off. But to Ian's point about the ending having all the main characters, the thing I love about this movie, and it's not a perfect movie, but to your part, what you were saying reminded me, like, this movie, I watched it again last night. I've seen this movie a dozen times. And this movie's actually got a lot of heart. I mean, when Sir John Talbot talks to Larry, and that would be
Lon Chaney,
Claude Rains and Lon Chaney Jr. respectively, it's just like he's there and he's kind of like saying, "Hey, Dad, I haven't been here 17 years," and John Talbot's tending the fire. He turns around, basically, let's cut to the chase. He's not blaming him at all. He's just like, "It's unfortunate that it took your brother's death to bring us together." There's a sense of you go into the movie thinking that this guy's going to be really hard on Larry, and he isn't. He's actually trying to work on the relationship with his son. Now, Larry does get a little creepy when he uses the telescope to spy on Gwen. But to your point at the end, when he knows he's the werewolf, he tells Gwen to stay away. He gives his dad the thing to kill him. Maleva, the gypsy woman, gives him a pendant to protect him. He gives it to Gwen to protect her. In other words, he set up the end for himself to die. He knows that there's one way out of here, and he protects everybody and gives them the way out. But he basically absolves them. He absolves his dad and everybody before he does that. And I was leaning towards a 2, but it's not a perfect movie in all things considered. But I think narratively, I think character-wise, I am going to give it a 3. I really appreciate it. I was going to give it a 2, and then what you said kind of connected all the dots for me. And despite any shortcomings of it, it's got a heart. All the characters are connected, and I think narratively it works. So I'm going to definitely give it a 3.
Well, I think I'll probably settle on a 2 for this. But let's be clear about one point. He is not creepy at one point when he looks at her through the telescope.
Creepy throughout.
He is creepy throughout this entire fucking movie.
I agree with that.
She continuously tells him no, and that she is engaged, and he continues to go after her.
I have in my notes, he literally does not take no for an answer.
Yeah, all right, that's true. He is really super creepy with Gwen.
But that'll come in the protagonist, maybe.
As a human and a werewolf.
Yeah. Exactly.
And probably less creepy as the werewolf.
I was just gonna say he's definitely less creepy, but I'm actually. But when he's not being creepy with Gwen, at the ending where he basically tells her to go away, I really enjoyed the dynamic between him and his father.
Yeah.
And maybe that's my own bias. But I think there's a lot of good threads because Maleva is Bella's mom, who is the first werewolf who kills Jenny, played by Bela Lugosi.
Maleva.
And he's the one who bites Larry. So there's all these connections going on, and for such a simple movie, and it's really, you could tell it's a set. There's the English forest set, but it's the smoky forest. But I really have to say, I character wise, as a narrative, I think overall it really works, and I feel because what you said about the ending actually it gelled it for me. So I am going to give it a 3.
All right, I'm probably going to just stick with a 2. Like I'll have been convinced to give it a bit more credit, but definitely not for a 3. So I'll stick with basically what you just said, Steve-O.
Yeah.
I'll go with a 2, but not a 3.
I'll swing to a 2. I'm nowhere near a 3, but I'll move up to a 2 for this one.
Exactly.
I'm honored that I convinced you of a 3. I'm giving it a 2.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
sounds good.
And Steve-O, would you like to talk about the themes?
Yeah. So I think that the themes are a little bit kind of shallow in this, but I think there's one that really like hit me, which is like the coming home again narrative, and like trying to connect with his father again. Then, like you said, the relationship between him and his father was probably the most convincing relationship in this movie, and B, the strongest one. So I think that whole like family thing, and another one that I wanted to briefly mention is the idea of this like myth eventually coming to like, you know, take hold of the story that we're watching and becoming involved in, and you hear about the werewolf like long before you ever see the wolfman, like, or anything like that. So, although it does happen pretty quickly that he gets bit. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'll leave other ones to you guys.
There are a number of juxtapositions in this work that I found very interesting. To start with gypsy culture versus the English culture. And particularly one the gypsies built on superstition and a kind of a
folk tradition
and like mysticism.
Yeah.
And then the science of the English society, except that the father thinks that they go to church at one point, and he talks about, although science, we still have to thank our creator for this thing, which is interesting that they have their own superstitions in this, but reject other superstitions because of a shield of science. Yeah. And again, though, also then science versus the supernatural, because the werewolf moves from, we find out, reality to mythology to psychology. And it's so removed from the reality that they can no longer handle it when faced with it. When Lon Chaney Jr.'s Wolfman seeks help, they automatically assume that it's a psychological problem, and not because they're, again, so removed from that. So I think it's a very interesting dynamic that they play out. But I don't think it's the anti-science necessarily. It might be a little bit anti-psychology, but I think that, but just having those two forces against each other, I thought was very interesting.
What I thought was really good to put on your point was the priest was talking to Maleva. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, you can't have a pagan ritual, and she's like, well, we've done it for 1,000 years. I couldn't stop it now if I wanted to. And he's just like, nonsense superstition, which is funny because somebody who's science-minded who might be a-religious or anti-religious might say the same thing about him, or even Maleva with different beliefs might say that about him. And it is interesting that you did say that here's a science-minded guy. Again, the movie begins with a book about lycanthropy, and then he still goes to church. It is that whole. It is very dynamic, so to speak.
And they actually, I think, talk about it quite a bit.
Yeah.
Throughout the film, so I do think there was an intentional discussion they were trying to have, and I think it pulled it off for the most part.
So all that is true. Like I was gonna come into this giving a 0 because what is it trying to say? But you guys are right, like, while maybe not exploring any of that stuff all too deeply individually, it's all sort of there throughout. Like, they have a conversations coming, the doctor is talking about, oh, it's just him uncomfortable and becoming mad. He's not literally becoming a werewolf and all that. But I was going to go with perhaps the classic sort of like, if you will, psychological answer in that it's the struggle of man versus his own dark nature, which is sort of always, you can always attach that to like a story like this, like Jekyll and Hyde, like anything like that. Right, so that was kind of there too. But again, like, I was going to be biased about it, admittedly, and probably just be like, and like sort of scoff at giving it any kind of credit on themes. But I think you guys made enough valid points that stuff was there.
It's actually funny, that point you just made was laughed at by this, or was what the scientists used.
Yeah, that's true.
To explain what's happening.
Yep.
So like, I guess it's all there well enough that I'll give it a solid-ish 1. And even though I originally was going to give it a 0, but you know, you guys convinced me, so good on you.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually coming here to think I'd be laughing at the priest thing, and I'm like, no, wait, that really is a nice puzzle piece that fits into it.
You're right. As you said, there's a lot of good juxtaposition, so I'll give him credit on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, and go on. One quick point I want to make. The gypsies, when they're like, we have a werewolf, let's get the heck out of here. It's like, perfect. That's exactly what everyone should have been doing.
Smart move.
Which is funny because Bella had been with them the whole time. So you get an idea that they're like, hey, we had control over this one, but now we have an unknown, so let's get the hell out of here.
Sure.
Anybody else? Okay. Steve-O, would you like to tell us about the antagonist?
I believe I will do that.
Oh, I am so sorry. Scott.
Sure. So I guess, like, this is another kind of difficult one. Don't become a werewolf. Don't get caught by a gypsy curse. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it, because of the nature of it, Lon Chaney, as to Larry Talbot, is both sort of the antagonist and protagonist, which we'll get to. Like, in a sense, right? To a degree, because he's sort of inadvertently antagonizing people when he becomes a werewolf. But, like, really, he's not, like, doing it on purpose. This is just something that happened. Like, this thing is real, and he's dealing with it the best he can, as you said, going around being like, hey, I think I might literally be an actual werewolf. Everyone's like, nah, you're fucking crazy. Right? So, like, maybe it's like the disbelief of, as you said, like, society marches on, and as it became, like, real, then myth, then like science, psychology, then but it's actually real, like, sort of loops back around. So I don't know if I can point to any one thing and say this is the antagonist or even the antagonistic force, but certainly I think everyone in town felt antagonized by it in some way, like the werewolf curse, I guess we can call it. So, like, the stigma of that, perhaps, and what it, like, how it affected Larry and what it made him do. So
I kind of going furrow myself here, in order to get a point. The fact is, you're right that Larry is both a protagonist and an antagonist, but what is failing him as a protagonist? What is antagonizing him? Yes, the curse,
but people won't believe.
But it's his father, the friend of his father, who's the psychologist. I wouldn't necessarily. Yeah, he has his friend who's the sheriff now, or the
police detective or whatever. Yeah.
But it's more so like their unwillingness to, or the fact that their views have become orthodox
or
in their
unable
mind,
to,
and they can't. They're unwilling to consider this until it's far too late to save Larry, who I think is a tragic figure here.
I would agree with that. So, like, yeah, I mean, that's a fine angle to take. So maybe given that, I could be convinced of a 1 to an extent. So what else you guys get?
I was kind of Larry. We're gonna get to protagonist in a minute, but it's funny because if he's the antagonist, he's the victim. I really don't know what else to say about it. I mean, I was just sitting here while you guys are talking, thinking about that Maleva is always giving them absolution. So, I mean, unless we're talking about the darker forces of physical, they're treated more as victims as the monsters than they are as werewolves.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that actually works as well. That builds upon what you just said too. So that might be enough for a 1 for me at this point. You got anything else to add?
No, I'm not sure I'm going to give this a 1.
Like I said, I was wavering, but
I see the antagonism as his own struggle with trying to realize what he's becoming and trying to. I mean,
that's valid too.
The thing is, it doesn't necessarily antagonize him all that much. He comes to terms with it pretty quickly, and then
I
it's
don't
just
know.
the struggle of trying to convince other people that that's the case. But I don't see any of the other characters as like antagonists. It's his struggle against their beliefs, I guess, which is what you said. He kind of, and I don't know. It just wasn't that strong of a point of this.
Like I
movie
see where
for
you're coming
me.
from in that
He
too.
literally has to commit suicide in order to stop himself from killing people.
Well, in order to stop himself from killing his love interest.
Yes. Well,
Because
yeah,
she was
His father and
Gravediggers, I guess, don't really
Yeah,
count.
she was marked as next,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
She had the pentagram on her hand,
Right.
which kind of worked sometimes and kind of wasn't the case all the
Right.
whatever.
Well,
Anyway,
go on.
Go ahead. Well, I mean, I don't.
I see
So
where
what I
you're
mean,
coming from.
but like, what does that have to do with? I guess his struggle with being a werewolf is the antagonist.
No, the struggle is the failure for people to get help, even when he was seeking it for this. I think that in a lot of ways he made all the right moves for what he could
Or
have
the
done
best
in this situation, and it just fate was that he had to die the same way that he killed the
original werewolf.
werewolf in the kind of poetic thing at the hands of his father. Like it's I don't know, it worked well for me, even though I don't know if it's. I think if it was made in the modern day, the point could have been brought back stronger. But I think this is actually a pretty bold kind of to make you sympathetic with the monster.
especially given the era that this was made in.
Sure. I mean, that's
Well, I
all
think
valid,
that's
like
what-
I said, so.
Because this is World War II escapism.
Sure. I think, but all I'm saying is, I think at the end of the day, I have been convinced to come down on a 1 for Antag, even though I can totally see, like, the angle you're probably going to take, Steve-O.
Yeah.
And I could have almost done it myself before this. So.
I don't know. Yeah, Ian, you made a good argument there, but I think I'm just gonna stick with a 1. It's just not quite
He's
enough
just
for me.
disbelieving himself.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Or I'm gonna stick with a 0. I mean, not a 1.
Okay.
So 1's for everybody else, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And it's to me with protagonist, and this one is a bit of a conundrum because Larry is the guy we're following throughout this. He is the antagonist. He is the victim. And I started again. I'm coming back to the even a man who is pure of heart who says his prayers by night. I was joking before in precast about like how lines are such exposition, but Larry is. I guess he is an effective protagonist because he is the nexus for which everybody talks about. Where the world. You get like 3 different angles on the mythology. You get, Gwen's and the townspeople, and then you get his father's, who's a little more rational on it, and then you've got the gypsies who know it's true.
Right.
So I was trying to figure out if Larry was truly the protagonist, and yeah, everybody speaks exposition at him, and
That's going to be in dialogue, but
but what I'm saying is a protagonist is supposed to be the audience's point of view, is it not? We're supposed to learn with the protagonist what is going on, and the thing is not to get bogged down in exposition, like some places do. But we are fed and we're reinforced it. But I don't know, as objectively, if we're saying protagonist as a object, Larry is protagonist. Now, whether that was effective or not, I'm going to pass it off to you because I'm talking myself into a circle.
All right, allow me to jump in real quickly because I'm going to call back to what Steve-O started off with. Like, I didn't like him as a protagonist. He certainly was a protagonist, no argument there, right? I don't think there can be one. But, like, how he was characterized, like, for example, like you mentioned, Steve-O, as we alluded to, literally not taking no for an answer.
That was like half his character. That bugged me.
He was sort of like the bumbling, arrogant American, and, like, that may be
He was British.
the point of it. Well, he had an
He's
American
not really
accent.
British though.
He might as well
been in
be.
America for 18 years. He's basically
Yeah.
American.
And he's been in
He's
California.
been in America since he was a
Sure.
kid.
All right, regardless
He's
of all...
like 25 years old. He's been there
Maybe.
since he was like 6 or
But
something.
regardless of that, like, but the thing is, like, I'm sort of torn because, as Ian also mentioned, as a protagonist in this story, he does make pretty rational and well-informed decisions and choices given, like, the nature of the situation and as he learns more information. So I'm sort of torn between that. I'm almost 50-50, so now I'll open up to you guys if you have any evidence to convince one way or another.
So I'm probably going to give this a 1 going forward,
Okay.
but I don't like his character. I think that part of it's due to kind of dated ideas over masculinity and all of that. But I find him tragic.
I mean, at the end of the day, he is. Yeah, I agree.
And he does make as I've mentioned earlier, with like,
a noble
father,
sacrifice.
here, take this with you in case you need to kill me. And that's it. He does the noble sacrifices, just my eye. And that works well enough for me to give
push it over.
Mild one,
Sure.
but still within the one.
I might be in the same boat, so go on.
I feel the same way as you guys about it. I'm finding it difficult to get over how fucking annoying he was.
Sure.
Like, in terms of the romance, which was like half the plot, which I didn't even think really needed to be in this movie. The only reason I think that it should have remained in the movie is because it would have been half an hour long if it wasn't. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, in terms of everything that had nothing to do with women, he was like a tragic character, and he was like this. It was a somewhat interesting like case study of a man, like this fish out of water who comes back home and like immediately gets like thrown into the depths of the horrible like mythology of the town that even the townsfolk don't believe in anymore, right? Like, I think that part is interesting, but I give almost as much credit to all the supporting characters as I do to him. And I know that I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but supporting characters are going to get a pretty strong one on this movie for me. I think I'm leaning towards a 0 with the protagonist again. I'm like right on the precipice with this one.
I feel you. I think I've been pushed over.
And you make a very good point, as I said, but yeah, sorry.
I'm saying, like, if it helps you one way or another, I think I have been convinced to just push it over the edge, like Ian said, a mild or a very soft one, but I will be a 1 at the end of the day for Protag.
And I agree. Anything not having to do with Gwen, he was an effective, sympathetic character. He was creepy with Gwen. But the fact that
Jimmy Stewart was a werewolf, it would be this movie. At least Jimmy Stewart from Wonderful Life.
He's like Superman creeping in your window.
Oh, I'm a werewolf too. Oh. Anyway. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
I want to see that movie.
I didn't mean to derail it, but I had to throw that out.
Please, we have to do that.
Anyway.
But no, as I said, mechanically as a protagonist, he serves his function. Half the time he's a sympathetic character. I agree with you. I'd give him a moderate 1. I didn't really know what I was going to give it at the end of the day, but it's going to get a 1. But you know, to both your points, he's 2/3, but that's enough.
I feel you.
Okay, and Scott, did I get it right?
I don't know.
No. Sorry, Ian. I'm getting lost in all this because
just go around the circle, man.
Yeah, I know, man. It's like a pentagram,
goes
man.
in order.
Ian gets
You're doing it like
characters.
a pentagram.
Bella fucking Lugosi plays Bella fucking the gypsy. He is fantastic as the creepy gypsy guy. And in fact, the gypsies in general,
agreed,
worked really well for me. I also thought Claude Rains was the best actor by far.
I agree with that.
Work played the father, and that story is tragic. And I think, again, as you mentioned, Steve, the supporting cast is great in this, so I'm going to give it a 1.
Yeah. I don't have much more to add to that because you guys said like it all. Like, there's not a lot of them, but there's enough. Like we mentioned, the police detective, Gwen and her friend Jenny. I was going to mention Vincent Price-looking guy who was like the psychologist doctor. I guess he's like friends with Sir Charles Talbot. But Sir Charles also, I thought, this might also get ahead of myself, that had the best lines and best speech.
Yep.
And I agree he's the best actor. But I think, all the side characters filled it out. It was believable. Like, I believed the gypsy camp. I also believed like the little people in town, like Gwen's father who ran the store and all that. Like everybody they met. And even like the bumbling friend who kept like sort of like, what's that mean, chief, or whatever he kept saying. Like,
oh God, I can't remember his name. Twitter? No.
Tweedle or some crap.
Yeah,
something like that.
That guy I was gonna say that guy's the only one I didn't really like.
But like, I'm saying he filled out the feel of the village, is what I mean.
He was the comic relief.
Yeah,
they had a village idiot, I guess.
Yeah,
like the police are like, come along, like he's like the
twiddle.
Like
yeah. So whatever though, but I'm saying it was all fine, like you said, Steve. It all was pretty solid to great throughout because they came together and filled out this world, and I believe like a lot of it. So I'm probably going to give it a 1. Pretty strong one.
Without question, Claude Rains is the best actor here. I mean, I can listen to the man read a grocery list, and it's going to be fantastic. I have a soft spot for Maleva. I think she's just, I love her.
She was a good character. Don't get me wrong.
She is.
Well.
She's just always shows up at the right place. Like she seems to more than anybody know what the hell's going on and where to be, and that she doesn't seem to be like just a Deus supporting character. So I agree with you. Supporting character is definitely the strongest point. It's getting
Bella the Gypsy's dead. Just wanted to say that at some point.
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, I completely think the supporting cast is great.
Yep.
Everybody except for that Tweedledee guy.
Twiddle.
Is awesome. And whatever. They had to have comedy relief, I guess. Comic relief.
It wasn't like too obtrusive, I guess.
Yeah, he was only in it a few times, so it was fine. It wasn't a big deal.
Exactly.
But, yeah, I'm gonna give this a pretty strong 1 for this category.
Alrighty. And Steve-O, it is you with dialogue.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
The dialogue is mostly just people explaining the town to Larry.
Yeah.
It's
a large portion of it.
Yeah, I don't. It's not amazing or anything, but it's serviceable. It got the plot where it needed to go. Maybe a soft 1. I don't know. There's not too much that I remember of it. It's not very memorable, so maybe I should be leaning towards a 0 in terms of this. But what do you guys think?
All right, so I'll read you out a little thing out of my note. It's stilted in the classic 1930s, 40s, 50s kind of style. So you can't help but notice that. It's almost like, again, they're overacting because it's like a stage play-ish in some sense. But that means that, as you guys also mentioned earlier, there's a lot of exposition. People are like, hey, Larry, here's the town, and you can buy X, Y, and Z here. And a lot of other times they'll be like, we must go do X. And then it cuts to the next scene of them doing whatever they just fucking said. So it was almost pointless. So I think I'm going to take credit away from here. And again, it wasn't bad or terrible. It just, that's the nature of it. Yes, people said what they needed to say, but that's very wooden often, at least in this film. So I'm looking at it probably soft to solid 0. I don't know if there's enough there to convince me to switch to a 1, but you guys can go ahead.
So, I think it's serviceable. And if it wasn't for one scene, it would get a 1 for me.
Okay.
However, after spying upon Gwen, there's a scene in the shop where he's trying to flirt with her.
So cringy.
I actually can't watch that scene.
That was awkward.
I have to fast forward through that because it's far too cringy for me.
Yeah.
And I can forgive a cringy scene if the rest of it's good, but I can't. Just serviceable with 1.
Yeah.
It's a 0.
And it's not like they were trying to be cringy in that scene. I feel like whoever wrote that was like, man, this is good stuff. This guy is really laying it on.
Yeah, for the time,
really, really good.
For the time, it was probably acceptable, but again, just nowadays,
and
it is not.
I watched that, I'm like, oh god, my skin is crawling.
He's turned into a werewolf himself.
Yeah, I purposely, seeing this a dozen times, I knew when that scene was coming, and I left the room. I think I got iced tea and did a bunch of other stuff.
You moved me to a 0 on that.
And the thing about the dialogue here is, I love everything that John Talbot says and Maleva says.
He has 2 really good speeches, and so does she.
But the thing is, I'm trying to decide, do those monologues count as dialogue? Do I count it? Do I like it because of the actor? Do I like it because of the delivery? So what my point is, I think I'm agreeing with Ian here that at the end of the day, the rest of the dialogue was just there, and except for the soliloquies, for lack of a better word, from John and Maleva, I think it was serviceable, but just everything having to do with Gwen was just so really, even for a B movie, it was
not everything. I think that it becomes palatable later on, and I kind of more bought into their relationship after the fair.
Yeah, me too.
But prior to that,
yeah. Well, we didn't say much about Gwen, so let me just go back real quickly because this kind of ties in. At the end, as you said, it's all sort of culminates and rushes. Before that, she's iffy about the relationship, and then she instantly sort of abandons her actual fiance, who doesn't show up again. We didn't even mention him either.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying, so
doesn't he show up in the hunt at the
He
end.
might be in the hunt, but he's like
Yeah.
gone for like 10, 20 minutes because it's a short movie. But regardless, yes, certainly those speeches, like there are dialogue. Like I say they can't, but I don't think it outweighs all. Like again, just the surfacey, serviceable stuff that was said, and then going down to the cringy stuff that we just mentioned. So that's my final thought. That's probably why I'm sticking with the 0.
And you know how hard it is for me not to get basically serviceable,
Sure.
but so Scott, why don't you tell us about the style?
All right, another kind of like interesting one to discuss because, as you mentioned, they're clearly like the famous Hollywood like movie sets. Like it's obvious, at least to us now. Like maybe it was less so, of course, back when this movie was released, but it still looks fine enough. It's almost like it might as well be the fucking castle from Dracula, like more or less, and like the surrounding like swamps and shit, and like the very small town. So it looked fine. Like, but I think what really like the legacy of this is like, you know, the creeping fog and like the shadows and the way it was shot. Like all that stuff still stands, I think, the cinematography at least. So like probably I'll give it credit on that front. That's probably like it's how it left like the most mark on the cinematic, you know, legacy, if you will, as I said. So you know, it has a nice foreboding like atmosphere, and like the music was pretty fine. It matched well enough a lot throughout. So I don't have much more to say, but I think it was damn solid enough, and it's sort of iconic in a way. Like these are the Universal monsters, and this is how they were shot. So I'm looking at a pretty solid 1 in style. So
to build on that, I think that the cinematography in this movie, and even like despite the fact that they were working with obvious sets, was really impressive. I thought it looked really good.
The lighting was really good.
I absolutely loved the music in this movie. I thought that might have been the best stylistic choice they made, and style is probably one of my stronger ones, actually. And even like the you know, makeup and all the hair.
I was waiting for one of you to mention that. Yeah.
I thought that was done really well for a 1941 movie.
The transformation scenes were, you know, obvious what they did now, but it was impressive for the time.
And like that stuff was stuff that like when we were growing
it had to have come from somewhere.
When we were growing up in the 80s, if you were watching like, you know, a stupid kids show on TV, that is exactly, they'd use the same technique to like do similar transformations or whatever. Like I saw that stuff growing up, like that same exact way, like via
transition stuff.
The same exact, like, you know, camera transitions or whatever. And like that made a huge mark on Hollywood doing that type of stuff. So
sure, you got to give it credit.
I'm gonna give it big credit for that.
Back 2 things I want to elaborate on. Number 1, about the makeup, the transition. When at the end, when Maleva comes over to him after he gets his foot caught in the trap, and he starts to de-transform, I was watching the fog, and whoever the editor was did a fantastic job lining up. So you really didn't notice. I mean, you could tell the cuts, but it wasn't like the fog's here, you know, and then it's here, and then it's here. But Steve, to your point, I don't know why I never noticed this about the cinematography. When they first enter the observatory, there's like a crane shot where where it starts on the ground and it comes up, and as Talbot's coming up there, I'm like, what an amazing shot.
Yeah.
Because these are small sets. This is a Universal horror film. But that is such a great shot. And I think for what they had, the director cinematographer made
it work.
The best use of it, and I did agree with you. I love the music on this.
So 2 quick notes. 1, Gypsy Fair, awesome set piece.
True. Agreed.
Second, our slight nitpick. Even though this is a British town, it's interesting the mixture of accents that are in here.
I was going to say, I can't wait till we get to Frankenstein, because the town looked a little more Bavarian than it did England, so I can't wait to see if James will use that.
It's a sign of the times for the nature of this movie, but I mean, it's a funny thing we can point out.
Oh, and there's one more thing I noticed last night. When Larry first starts his first transformation, he's wearing a white tank top undershirt, but when he's running around as the werewolf, he's got a
basically has a Michael Myers fucking thing on.
So he changed during the transformation.
Yeah, well, he was uncomfortable
and tucked in his shirt.
He's got his workday clothes. He's got his werewolf clothes.
Exactly, and he woke up with his werewolf clothes.
Sure.
But yeah.
So anyway,
and the other thing I noticed was that he walked on tippy toes when after, and it's just the detail in this movie. I agree with you.
Oh, sorry. Other one. Bela Lugosi changed to a full wolf.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He was not a wolf man at all. He was a wolf. Straight up.
He's been at it longer. He can control it better, perhaps. But anyway, I think it's 1 for style all around, seems like.
Agreed.
I think deservedly so.
Yeah.
And it's To Me with Recommend, and I wholeheartedly recommend this movie. I actually never saw it until it was on AMC, like when back in the 90s, and I just immediately I found it a very charming movie. Now that we've discussed the themes,
Some of you might have been born in the 90s. Chris is much older than you.
Yeah, I am. But no, what I'm saying is, this out of all the Universal monster movies, for some reason, this was the one that eluded me when I was a kid, and I was very charmed with it. I enjoyed it. I wasn't expecting to come in here and give the score I did, but the themes and the relationships, and now that we've discussed this, I'm like, wow, there's so much more going in this film once you break it down to its elements. Aside from that, I think it's an enjoyable film. I think it's an enjoyable romp. Now that we've deconstructed it, I'm like, wow, this film's got a lot more going on than I thought it had. So I'm definitely giving it a recommend.
That's sort of where I land, like what you just said. Like, I was coming into this being like, it's going to be like a 6 or 7 is okay. But having talked it out, and I think I'm going to give it a better score than I thought originally as well, then yeah, it is worth it. It does still stand. It stands more often than it fails, I'll say. So I still think it is worth a watch. And it does, again, take its place in the pantheon of classic monster movies. So
I think that the Universal horror films still put their imprint on horror today.
Yeah.
And you can see what this codified in werewolf lore. I prefer by far American Werewolf in London.
Yeah.
Which I think is the best werewolf film. But I would definitely watch this before American Werewolf in Paris.
For sure.
Which I think is the worst.
That movie literally gave me a migraine.
All right.
But I like this quite a bit. And if you're a fan of either old school horror films or werewolf lore, I think this is well worth a watch. I mean, it's a fairly short film.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, it's like watching a 2-part episode of Twilight Zone type thing. And that's what it felt like to me. So I definitely give it a recommendation.
Yeah, I agree with that. It did feel kind of like that Twilight. It had that Twilight Zone-y feel with like some extra stuff thrown in. So I am going to give it a recommendation. I think that these are fun movies to watch, especially like, it's short. It's an hour and 10 minutes long. Throw it on.
Yeah.
I was around Halloween or something, or when you like have friends that like monster movies, or you want to just see a cheesy old movie or whatever. Like, it's fun. It's a little deeper than some other like B horror movies from the 40s and 50s might be. It's worth a watch. I mean, I gave it the weakest score, but by no means did I hate the experience watching it.
I feel you.
So, check it out.
All right, so where does that leave us?
Okay.
Whoever can do the math.
I'm actually figuring that one out.
I've got the math done.
Okay, you got the math done?
I believe. I should be right.
All right, hit me, werewolf.
Chris, you gave it the highest score with a 9. Ian and Scott both gave it 8s, and I gave it a 6, which I believe leaves us at a 7.75.
If true.
Does that check out, Chris?
He has no idea.
I think it was a 7.7 repeating, but no, wait, hold on a second.
That's impossible.
You're right.
7.75, you're right.
You're right, 7.75.
And I think that's probably about right. Maybe, I thought it would be a little lower, but I think that sits roughly within the right range of what this movie, I think, deserves on a numbered scale.
Yeah.
All right.
I got nothing else.
Anybody have anything else?
I do not.
Well, gentlemen, The Way You Walked was thorny, though no fault of your own. Ian?
Am I supposed to finish that? Because I have no idea.
No, I'm just saying you're signing
Have a good night.
Steve-O. And Scott, what's your thorny pass?
I'm gonna go get a big dish of beef chow mein right now. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Christopher Morgan. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.